Welcome to the Navigating Dental Insurance Podcast, where we don't take from insurance companies. Here are your hosts, Mr. Jordon Comstock and Mr. Ben Bodily.
Welcome, folks, to another episode of the Say No to PPO's podcast series. This is the Navigating Dental Insurance Podcast. My name is Ben Bodily. We got Jordon Comstock. What's up, Jordon?
Yo, Ben, how you doing, man?
Doing excellent.
It was good to hear
Are you enjoying your
this last week?
Yeah. You know, I got 1 hour, and usually I get 2 to 3 to 4 hours. And this was I got back to my computer Friday afternoon, and I had literally over 120 emails. It's like everybody in the room sent an email to me.
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. Yeah, you did a good job.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Funny thing is that I don't know what it is. Since I moved to the United States back in 1999 or 2000, I just have these perpetual nosebleeds. My wife keeps pushing me to go see the ENT. I know, but I think I've been having these nosebleeds so much that there's a vessel up there. Yeah, that just every time I blow my nose bleeds. It's crazy.
Yikes.
So after that talk on Friday, I step outside, and after you left, my nose started to bleed, and luckily I didn't get anything on my suit. I always come prepared with some tissue and toilet paper.
Luckily, it didn't happen when you were speaking, man. Holy smokes!
Oh, on Sunday it happened, because on Sunday, as part of our church group, I was up there speaking. And the minute that I sat down, my nose started to just rush. I got some blood some blood on my white shirt, and luckily I missed one of my favorite ties. But when you live dangerously like me, you deal with blood on a daily.
So dangerous, Ben.
Yeah. Well, hey, we have a good friend of ours, actually, a great guest on our program today. We got Brandyn Bodily from Patterson Dental. Brandyn, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Totally.
We've been wanting to have you on the podcast for quite a bit. We have a lot of doctors that use CEREC and use other technology that, in our opinion, qualifies for material fees, which we're going to talk about today. But we, at the request of a lot of our listeners, and if you don't use a CEREC, I think this is still relevant to you, because there's a lot of doctors out there that are looking to bring their own mill in-house to have more control. And of course, we believe that's a good investment. So Brandyn, talk to us about for those that don't understand CEREC, tell us a little bit about it. And then when Brandyn goes through this, folks, what we'll do in the end is we'll talk about the billing component, because it's just not billing $27.40 to insurance for the crown, or if you're doing an inlay or an onlay. There's more to it that you need to be aware of, and we'll talk about that. But I want to just ask Brandyn here, just to briefly go over CEREC, some of the changes, as well as some of the technology, and the reason why it's becoming a very sexy product in the dental practice today.
You bet. So CEREC, for the last 30-plus years, has kind of owned the market in single-visit dentistry, and we're now to a point where there's a lot of different CADCAM solutions, but CEREC will still be a dominant player since it's owned by Dentsply Sirona, and it really has the longest track record. So Patterson has supported it for the last 20-plus years, and it's just been a wonderful system for doctors to use when integrated properly into their system. So, but the nice thing now is it's not just a inlay, onlay, and crown machine. You can really do many things with it. It's totally great for custom abutments, screw routine crowns, surgical guides. Just to start off with where it's at today.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember, when was it when we had that extravaganza up in Salt Lake City? And was it Dr. Hadfield or Hadley?
Yeah, Dr. Andy Hadfield.
Hadfield.
He's one of our local basic trainers here in Salt Lake area.
Oh, right on.
So he gave a presentation that was pretty phenomenal. I think I kind of ripped off his military side of his presentation, and I now incorporate it. That's actually what inspired me to talk about in my last dental economics article, where I wrote about the Battle of Baltimore. And his talk inspired me to incorporate that story, that military whole background and military gratitude. But the areas that he talked about were really interesting, because for years and years and years, as somebody that deals with dental insurance, you deal with doctors that use CEREC or other types of mills. And oftentimes the question comes, is it even worth it to bring a CEREC in the office? Is it worth the investment? And he so beautifully outlined how much worth it was. Do you mind talking about some of those things that he talked about in terms of cost savings and control?
Yeah, the real message that he had is, what brings passion into your practice, and it's really about driving the patient experience, and that's something that Patterson has coined, and that we believe in. Our culture is that we have to deliver a better patient experience, and we have to all partner in, everyone that's in the industry, and but we also have a responsibility to increase the practice lifestyle. And with that, CEREC, obviously, if you're doing enough crowns or surgical guides or the different procedures that you do, it can very quickly be a wonderful thing for the practice to improve cash flow. And the economics of it now are pretty straightforward, but it's really more of a message of, what brings new patients into your practice and what increases the case acceptance. And it's no longer just, are you doing 15 crowns a month to justify the cost? So that's one of the wonderful things about it. There's some tax advantages. I'll let you talk a little bit about that if you want to, but it's, by the time you pay for the equipment, it really isn't, the $160,000 investment that you have to worry about. Almost all doctors now who purchase it and move forward with it, whether they just do digital impression only or they do the full in-office milling and single visit zirconia, it's the economics of it are pretty simple now.
Yeah,
totally.
It's come a long way in terms of technology. You mentioned zirconia. I didn't know that you can mill a zirconia crown using CEREC. When did that start?
Oh,
a year or so ago, we really started. They launched it a couple of years ago, but it could do the Bruxer quality zirconia, the translucent zirconia that we call CEREC and Chorus, and CEREC zirconia. They just recently at Chicago Midwinter announced, and we now have doctors doing the new Katana multi-layered zirconia. So
wow.
You give up a little bit of strength, but it's incredible zirconia strength. But then you have high aesthetics, which is, kind of been one of the weaknesses of
the zirconia.
Zirconia is getting the right balance of aesthetic and strength.
Yeah.
And then obviously Emax has, dominated the market as well, that CEREC has done for years.
Yeah, totally.
So,
I know. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Ben.
No, you go, Jordan.
I just remember when years ago when I was at the lab, we had invested into the CEREC, and then I think I left maybe a year after. But yeah, we started doing zirconia on the CEREC, the MCXL. And recently I was talking to my dad, and they were saying, yeah, the zirconia has come a long way since then, and they're definitely making it look a lot better, which is kind of cool because yeah, definitely zirconia had some weaknesses in regards to looking good on front anterior teeth, right?
Yeah, it really has, and
yeah.
It's in the early days it was very opaque, and
yeah, totally.
The labs take 6 to 9 hours to sinter it.
Yeah.
Well, now you can do it chairside and sinter it in about 13 to 15 minutes. So
really, and it's still strong.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
been pretty revolutionary. The machine's about the same height as the milling unit, so it plugs into 110. It works in all dental practices where sintering zirconia in the past was. It's been the size of a mini fridge, and
yeah,
it took 220 power and a lot of time to sinter. So they made it so that you can do it very simple now.
I think my dad has.
It's almost easier than Emax.
Really?
Because you just take off the sprue and throw it upside down and hit the start button and walk away. So that's been a lot of fun.
That's crazy how much it's changed then since I did it years ago.
Yeah.
I think
CEREC's been a wonderful user. So, and that's the nice thing about CEREC also is that the labs are involved as well. So it is a fully integrated system, not just in-office milling, but you can work with the lab. And then, one of the big buzzwords in CADCAM right now that is STL, and CEREC now allows doctors to export the STL file too. So anyone can receive the model.
Really? I know that was a huge thing when we were managing it, that CEREC, they didn't do the STL files, right? But now that's pretty cool that they're doing that now. Very cool.
Yeah, it is still nice to be able to scan it and send it through what they call the CEREC Connect portal,
Yeah.
and work with the lab, because then the doctor can draw the margin.
Yeah.
But there's also many times where you just want an STL file, like if you're going to 3D print in office, you can print things like a printed surgical guide in a few minutes. And so there's solutions that they really needed to have STL files, and it's a wonderful thing to kind of complete the system.
Super cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the value add, because before we go into the billing component, some doctors refer to it as an upgrade, some refer to it as a material. I personally call it a material fee, not an upgrade. The key component. So for those of you that are wanting to know, okay, how do I do a material fee? The key component is the value add. What makes this different than traditional
PFM.
milled crowns? Yeah, PFM. So most insurance carriers cover PFM, but before we dive deep into that, do you guys think that PFMs are kind of going away in the industry?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, EMAC has been dominating for years.
I think
Jordon can probably talk to that more from the lab side.
Yeah, when I was at the lab years ago and just talking to my dad and my brother, who's still at the lab, I don't think they've done a PFM for years.
Yeah.
I think they've done mainly zirconia, EMAX, and all the other. There's a few other things out there that I don't know what they're called anymore. But I think PFMs are going away, and they should, because zirconia and EMAX they're way better. They're way better.
So we'll get to that in a minute. The value add as to why more doctors are doing EMAX and zirconia crowns, why more doctors are shifting more towards the CEREC types of crowns or using a CEREC in-house. So on the billing side, traditionally PFMs have been the covered crown: PFM base metal, PFM noble, and then even a full cast base metal crown. Jordon, in your history, have you guys ever milled a full cast base metal crown? That ugly silver, clumpy, ugly looking thing?
So when I was at the lab, the majority of the time I was there, the digital side of things came towards the end. I actually was trained on like casting metals, like gold crowns, and I remember doing a lot of castings for the full base metal, which they're horrible in my opinion. I don't know why anyone would.
I was going to say, do you miss that?
No, I do not miss that. Casting is hard work, but no, I don't miss that. I like sitting in front of my computer and helping practices, with their membership programs versus casting metal and getting, all the metal. When you're casting metal, it shoots out of the crucible, burns your shirt a little bit, so you always go home with holes in your shirt from the metal, the hot metal.
Oh man,
there was definitely an amazing skill to that. That's for sure.
Yeah. So that's what I learned. Majority of my time at the lab, I was doing all the castings and everything, and then at the tail end, I started doing digital dentistry, which I loved way more than traditional. But yes, Ben, I have in my lab days, I did create some base metal crowns, and I think they're horrible.
So yeah, that's you mentioned the key word. I didn't bait you or prep you, but
yeah, no.
When it comes to material fees, you always have to ask that question: what's the value add over this crown versus what the insurance covers? So for base metal crown, you said horrible. For PFMs, it's just old. So, there are some doctors that still do PFMs today, but insurance carriers have shifted from covering base metal crowns because they're so cheap and inexpensive on the reimbursement side.
There's so many problems that come with it too.
Yeah.
Now that digital dentistry is here, I remember the day when I was at the lab, we got the CEREC and we started using it and realized, holy smokes, the quality of products that we can, restorations that we can create with this thing, it is like night and day different from when there's PFMs and even just the CEREC Connect side of things, where doctors would send the lab digital impressions. I like one of the biggest problems in dentistry, in my opinion, on the clinical side is impression material is horrible, and it changes if the doctor takes an impression and lets it sit for a few hours and then calls the lab to come pick it up. It changes, and if it changes slightly, the crowns don't fit. Nothing works, right? So I'm a big fan of just digital dentistry, because I've been there in the days where it was mostly the impressions, and it just sucked.
Yeah, it changes the whole experience for the patient, but
Exactly,
for dentists, and now the dental assistant can now with CEREC, and you can basically do the scan preoperative while the patient's getting numb, trim out the tooth that's going to be restored, and then the dentist comes in about 5 seconds, has the final impression finished. So not only is it more precise, but post-op, it saves a ton of time not having to wait for the impression to set.
Yeah, and patients don't like waiting, so that's a huge benefit for the patient.
Yeah,
I don't like waiting.
Yeah, you guys are hitting the nail on the head in terms of the value add. And that's a key question that you have to ask yourself whenever you're introducing a material fee, or for some of you that call them upgrades, is you have to find the value add, the difference between this type of approach or technique or product versus an old technique, or an older way of doing things, or in other words, the systems that insurance have placed for coverage. If they're going to cover a full cast base metal crown, what's the difference? What is the value difference? Why am I paying extra dollars out of pocket as a patient for this? And you have to address that. You have to, not for every single situation, but you just have to justify the value add and build enough value to justify the fee. What other value adds do you guys see between, just to give our listeners some ideas as they build their own consent forms and build their own policies as to why to justify the why we're introducing a material fee? What other value adds do you guys have to share from old crowns, full cast base metal PFMs versus the newer technology, especially as it pertains to CEREC?
We hear quite a bit of different value add as far as on the insurance side, and some doctors will refer to convenience fees and different things. I always refer them back to experts like you, Ben, where what the insurance contracts are, and what can, and the different tax codes of what's available. Obviously the 179 tax advantage helps justify and helps the cost of buying the equipment. But as far as the material, there are in the past there's been some doctors have taken advantage of, and I always like to refer back to their accountant and to insurance experts just to make sure that they get the right message. So you two can probably answer that a lot better than I can, but there are definitely some things that like convenience fees that I understand are in some possibilities, but I'll let you talk to that more.
Yeah, absolutely. Convenience fee, same day fee, which is the same as a convenience fee.
Yeah.
The other component is the cosmetic component to zirconia. So you mentioned translucent zirconia. So this day and age, does a technology exist to where you can do 100% zirconia crowns instead of EMAX crowns? Because I know a lot of doctors do EMAX because of the cosmetic component. Brandyn, what's your opinion about zirconia? So a lot of doctors want to go that direction to 100% zirconia. So can they do that?
Yeah, so that's what they are now. Yeah, in the early days, like what Jordon was talking about, when their lab started, they would mill out the zirconia coping, and then they would put an EMAX on the top or stack porcelain to it. Now it's all. Yeah, now it's no longer layered. Now it's all one piece. You'll mill the block, and then it's a translucent zirconia.
Wow, that's so cool.
Or they can do the new multi-layered. So it's a highly aesthetic zirconia, but there's still times where you'd want in the EMAX. I don't know if I'd put the katana block everywhere in the mouth, but I've seen anterior cases already done with it. It's, they're much more aesthetic than they were in the past. But yeah, everything that's done in office right now is all single visit. And it's all, one product. The other thing is you don't have to worry about, the porcelain chipping off or anything like that. It's all.
Oh yeah, totally.
One solid block. So the process is very simple now. The nice thing is you can do custom abutments and screw retain crowns. So you can design it all as one piece, and right before you go to mill it, if you did want a zirconia substructure or an EMAX custom abutment, you could separate it right before mill, and you can mill the abutment and the crown or the veneer separate. But I'm finding that most people are loving the screw retain crown even for the implants.
Oh yeah,
and just making it all in one piece.
Yeah, I've seen those just speaking to my dad recently, and those seem really cool and beneficial for both labs, dentists, and the patient.
Yeah,
and
that's awesome.
the full contour zirconia in the CEREC machine, and there's different, systems like I talked about, that there are sometimes advantages where, like on the ortho side, a doctor may want to consider the Trios that we sell and support that's, has a incredible ortho software. CEREC does that as well, but there's definitely a few advantages. CEREC's not 100% on everything, but it's definitely the most well-rounded system. But with the zirconia, it takes about, depending on what you're milling, maybe about 10 minutes to mill. Emax can go anywhere from 5 to 7 minutes, and then about 13 to 15 minutes to fire, and you're done. Polish it up and put it in the mouth, and it's all single visit. So,
wow,
it's the strength of it's amazing compared to what it was even 5 years ago.
I actually have a neighbor that got a treatment plan from, I'm not going to mention any names, but we have a dental practice literally in my backyard. I could not necessarily throw a rock at them.
I know
but
who you're talking about.
there are two of them. There are two practices there, and now there's an ortho practice that's starting. And they got a treatment plan from one of the general dentists there on a crown. I think it was number 8 or number 9. And my neighbor heard a radio advertisement for another doctor that was promoting same-day crown service. And so these doctors here locally probably didn't like this, but my neighbor went up to the same-day crown office because she's like, I can't go back. I can't go today and then go back 2 weeks from now and get it. Yeah. And she's like, that's just a whole lot of time. So she said, I called this other office, and they said that they would probably be able to get this done within 2 hours, 2 hours to 3 hours. So, and all in the same day, and I don't have to come back. So she went up to that practice, and it's about 5 miles from here, and got a same-day crown. And I called that office and said, do you get a lot of that? And they said, yeah, we get a lot of people that come in. They just get their crown done here, and then they go right back to their general dentist for regular routine care. But just that convenience factor, I know, and I know some people are going to be upset hearing that, but the reality is that convenience factor is huge.
It's important to people.
Especially here in Lehigh, where, I mean, traffic hour is 24/7. It's just crazy, the roads here, and it's pretty much most major cities in the U.S. where people just don't want to travel. They don't want to go back to the dental practice more and more and more. So let's talk about the HITECH Act. So the HITECH Act, when you talk about material fees, that's one area that you don't want to bill. You don't want to bill a CEREC or a convenience fee or material fee, cosmetic fee, lithium disilicate fee, or a long-lasting zirconia fee. You don't want to bill that as a 2999 to insurance. In fact, you don't even want to bill the material fee at all. You bill the crown code. So if it's an Emax or a zirconia, you bill $27.40 to insurance, and you help the patient max out whatever available coverage that they have for that crown. But on the material fee side of things, the HITECH Act is in place to give patients options to waive billing insurance, any procedure that they choose. And kind of like how most practices have whitening codes, and they code it differently. They'll have Zoom, and in their CDT code, in their fee schedule, they'll have a code that says D Zoom. And they never bill that to insurance. And of course, it's not a CDT code, so insurance carriers wouldn't recognize it. But the problem that many practices have is they think that if you bill that everything you do, you have to bill to insurance, which is for the most part true. Everything that has a code associated with it, you have to bill to insurance, unless the patient signs a consent form indicating that this procedure is not covered. There's no code for it, so therefore it's not a recognized billable item to insurance. So building that expectation to the patient that they have to pay for that fee out of pocket, at least the material component of the crown that you're seating, whether it be a convenience fee or a cosmetic fee. If the patient signs that consent form, they have HITECH Act protection. HITECH Act, Google it, HITECH Act of 2009, is a privacy law. So this law was passed to add more privacy measures for patients that gives patients the constitutional right to waive the use of insurance or the billing of insurance for any procedure for any reason. And this was created primarily because, a lot of the conservative members of the Senate and the House, their constituents were concerned about the new healthcare legislation being put in place, and if it were to become law, which it did, that there would be just too much information shared with the government that they didn't want. Some things they didn't want to be shared with the government. They wanted more privacy, or some things they just didn't want to be shared with their insurance company, especially on elective procedures. And I can give a whole array of examples of that. But one example is what we're talking about: the CEREC use of the CEREC machine, cosmetic fees, same-day crown convenience fees. The goal is not to nickel and dime the patient, but the main intent in why doctors want to do this is to find ways to better pay for the quality of dentistry that's being performed. Now, I hear rumors, I continue to hear rumors that sometimes you can do a beautiful anterior case, like let's say number 9, and you can incur up to $450 to mill that crown. Of course, this is outsourcing the crown to a lab, and having them mill it and add a whole layer of cosmetics to it. If your lab fee is $450, whether you mill it in house or send it to a lab, the question then becomes: do I want to do that crown when my total maximum reimbursement from the patient's insurance, insurance payment and patient payment is $650? There's no profitability. I'm losing money.
Definitely cuts the profit margins.
Yeah. and even with CEREC users or doctors that are looking to purchase a CEREC, that they really want to do it, but they in their minds are thinking, how am I going to make money? How am I going to offset the cost of using this beautiful machine in my office when the insurance carrier, their allowed amount for crowns is $500 to $600?
Just
get
what I mean? Away from insurance.
Exactly. And it take we understand that it takes time for doctors to do that. So your options now is you can definitely use the HITECH Act. HITECH Act, and give patients give them more control. Give them the authority. And I'm not a big fan of hearing case presentation where doctors give every option under the sun to the patient. The best presenters that I've seen.
How much we can overwhelm the patient, Ben.
Yeah. I like just 2 options. Give me your best option, and I understand that informed consent, you have to tell me the risks of doing nothing, and that's all I want to hear is give me the best option, give me what the out-of-pocket is going to be, the value too, and then give me the risks of not doing anything. And that's solid case presentation, in my opinion. You're satisfying informed consent in terms of doing things, doing what's appropriate in terms of the dentistry, covering the costs and so forth. But give me the opportunity to elect to have that CEREC crown, same-day convenience, and let me pay the same-day convenience fee to get it done today. As a working professional, I don't want to come back and take another 2 to 3 hours off of work, which would end up costing me more money in the long run. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I have a question. So if a practice wants to utilize, the HITECH Act, do they have to have like forms or agreement with a patient before they do anything like that?
Yeah. So for our CEREC users, you have your standard treatment planning document that discloses insurance and is estimated out of pocket and all that. And then you have a separate form that covers the material consent, the same-day convenience fee. And then that form, it should always mention in there an insurance waiver component, a non-covered service component, that the material fee or the same-day convenience fee is an election by the patient, understanding that it's not covered by insurance and it's not going to be billed to insurance, and that the patient fully supports and agrees and approves that measure.
Okay.
And so, yes, you should have a single consent form, standalone consent form, specifically for a crown material fee.
And I also get a question asked, like, I swear it's every week, from consultants and from our practices that are using our software. What if I'm a patient and let's say I'm just sick of my dental insurance and I don't want to deal with it anymore. Could I waive my insurance and then just sign up for like a membership program that the practice offers?
Yeah, you can. Doable? You can do that. I mean, are you talking about firing your dental insurance?
Yeah, just talking about just firing my dental insurance, because obviously I don't have dental insurance, everybody, and I never will. But I know there's a lot of practice out there that are asking me this personally. how can we, if a patient's unhappy with dental insurance and they want to sign up for our in-house membership program, is there a way to do that? And they could achieve that through the HITECH Act, having the waivers and consent forms.
Well, yeah. Like if you have insurance and you don't discontinue it, let's say your employer's paying for it, yeah, you can, and you want to use an in-house membership plan to govern all your treatment moving forward.
Yeah.
And you elect to not disclose any of that treatment to your insurance plan, yeah, you can do that. The HITECH Act is there to do it. But I would be very careful, because if there are benefits that are free for the patient on the insurance side,
absolutely,
I think we have an obligation to help those patients use those benefits. I've seen some practices that just didn't know any better. They bring in a CEREC machine into their office, and they waived even billing $27.40 to the patient's insurance plan. And they billed the patient the full $1,000 crown plus a $200 CEREC, convenience fee. And I think that's not appropriate. I think you should help the patient max out every ounce of insurance, whether they pay for it or their employer pays for it, max it out.
Yeah.
And then everything thereafter.
Which is really easy to do these days.
Oh, yeah. You can submit 1 to 2 crowns and the patient's benefits are maxed out. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But the important thing is just getting the right coaching on this and mentoring on these material fee and insurance waivers, just so that you're not shooting yourself in the foot. Absolutely. So we've just scratched the surface, in terms of HITECH Act and material fees. And, the whole purpose was in bringing Brandyn on was to illustrate the point that, for those of you that have a CEREC machine that have asked questions about charging material fee, yes, you can do that. CEREC immediately qualifies just because of everything that Brandyn and Jordon mentioned in terms of the added value component of using a CEREC versus traditional methods. And then as well as, if I buy the CEREC, is it going to pay off in the long run? And I can easily say everybody that I know that has a CEREC, is it paying off? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
In fact,
I know it paid off for my dad personally. The lab. Yeah.
The economics are kind of fun when you start running the doctor through the economics of it, totally. Because they start seeing things that they've never even thought of before, and not just the insurance side of it, but procedures that you would have never even considered that you can now do, totally. And have the patient back to work. That even things as a partial denture, taking it, scanning it, milling it, and it drops right in. Very little, if any, adjusting to it. So with that HITECH Act, Ben, obviously it sounds like that's a possibility for single visit dentistry, but we have more and more doctors that are just doing digital impressioning. So is there limitations to that, as far as if they just do a digital impression only and scan it and send it, or if they're just doing 3D printing with this act? And most doctors want to have more information on it. They just contact you and you take them through the forms, and kind of what's the limitations to it?
Yeah, absolutely. The limitation is this. The first thing is dental insurance, when you're dealing with them, you have to understand that what they pay for and what they cover is functional and fitting dentistry. Let's just, let's get you the basics. Let's just restore the decay, as an example, amalgam on posterior teeth. While many doctors view amalgam restorations as an acceptable form of dentistry, but a lot of people in the public don't want it. A lot of people want the tooth colored fillings. And so, when you look at that difference, the amalgam versus the composites obviously are more expensive. The composites are considered above and beyond standard form of care. So the limitation is if you're doing amalgams, no, you cannot charge a material fee. There's no added value. If you're seating base metal crowns and covered PFM crowns with absolutely no aesthetics put on the crowns whatsoever, or no EMAX, no zirconia, if you're doing the type of dentistry that's covered by the insurance, meaning the minimum standard of care, then yeah, you cannot charge a material fee. In the end, you have to ask your question: what justifies a material? Well, how do I financially justify what I'm charging? Is what I'm doing different than what the insurance carrier covers? And if the answer to that is yes, that your $100 or $150 or $200 material fee is fully justified by the service, then you're okay. You're protected. So it's just as simple as asking yourself, am I doing more than functional and fitting dentistry? And if the answer to that is yes, then yes, there's a material fee that you can definitely incorporate. And even if it's doing digital impressions, sending it off to a lab, and if they're coming back with an EMAX crown, which EMAX
Still counts,
automatically qualifies as a material fee because it's above and beyond the form-fitting dentistry that you get from insurance. Same thing with zirconia. You know, some of the zirconia material will last you for thousands and thousands of years, you know, far beyond our lifetime. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, Brandon, limitations are if you're doing insurance dentistry, then no, you can't use you can't use the material fee concept. But everybody I can imagine is doing a far and above what insurance carriers pay for. So I think every practice qualifies to use a material fee waiver to collect more money.
Very cool. Very cool.
Well, Brandon, it's been great having you on the show today. I know that you're here locally in Utah, and so we do have listeners in Utah and in local markets. What markets do you cover? Are you just here in Utah, or do you cover other markets?
Yeah, I cover all of Utah and then all of Las Vegas area.
Okay.
Awesome.
So if you're in Utah, Las Vegas, we'll post your contact information if they have specific questions about CEREC or about CEREC technology. So for those of you that are outside of Brandon's territory, just respect his time. You know, he does this for a living, and he's been gracious enough to come on our show and talk about the CEREC. Brandon, if other doctors outside of your territory are interested, do we just send them to the Patterson website, or is there a specific phone number?
Or if they want to respond, I have contact with all or a majority of the CEREC specialists around the nation. We're now CADCAM specialists because we do support iTero and Trios and
right on.
A lot more than just CEREC now. So even if they have general CADCAM questions, we are the experts on that. And, you know, any sales or support and interest in it, we can I can put them in contact with who their local person is and help them assess. And our corporate office is always, helpful in the technology center to connect them with who their local person is. So, yeah, awesome. Depending on what level their questions are, I'd probably just give them the contact information and have their local CADCAM specialist contact them. But I'm happy to help however I can.
Excellent.
Sweet.
So we'll post Brandon's information in the show notes. So just click on it and expand the show notes, and you'll see Brandon's contact information on the bottom. Brandon, any closing thoughts for our listeners?
No, thanks for the wonderful job that you do. It's nice to have you as a resource when, you know, people do ask the different, questions on insurance. It's, we always send them to the experts, and it's nice to have you as, to be able to handle that, because there's so many different, things that doctors want to be careful of and make sure they're doing it right, but also not writing off money that they shouldn't be. So totally. I greatly appreciate that. And it's been, it's always fun to chat with both of you, regardless of what show we're at. It's you guys seem like every time I talk with you, I learn something new. So I appreciate that.
Awesome.
Well, Brandon, thank you so much for your time today. We value your input and your time, and we're so grateful for the friendship that we have with you. And for those of you that are seriously interested in CEREC, we highly recommend getting a hold of Brandon. But Brandon, we want to wish you a great rest of the day, and we look forward to seeing you at the next conference. So,
thank you. It was good to chat with you today.
Likewise. All right, Jordon. We'll catch you guys later.
All right. Peace.
Thanks, Jordon.
All right. See you, Brandon.